Hey guys, this is Jim Fuge, and this is guitarbyjimi.com. And in today's free lesson, as promised, I'm going to explain how to improvise on the guitar. Now, this is kind of like for guitar players that are kind of just getting to that point to start playing on their own. And even if you're not at that point, if you're before that point and you're kind of more of a beginner, this will be helpful for you to kind of watch and learn and try to remember when you get to that stage. And if you're an advanced player, it might help you too. So hopefully this lesson will help everybody, all stages of playing guitar. Now, it's kind of funny, and it sounds like a little bit of an oxymoron or a paradox here. I'm going to teach you how to improvise, right? Sounds a little funny. But the truth is, no one can really teach anyone how to improvise per se, because that's why it's improvising, right? It's got to come from the heart and the mind a bit. And just as you practice more and more, you get better and better at it. So it's kind of one of those things you have to do. But what I can do is, for myself over the years, when I started many years ago playing, I tried to remember, like, some of the key things that I learned when I was figuring this all out too, how to improvise, and things I've taught my students over the years, and if I can speed up the process a little bit for you, that would be very helpful. So that's what this lesson is intended to try and do, is maybe speed up the process and make you think of the top 4 or 5 things that maybe you want to think about when you're trying to get better at improvising. And it'll probably speed you up. So here we go. So the first thing is, let's pretend we're in a nice easy key like A. Doesn't really matter. So what do? Let's just say, let's take something nice and simple, right? So tip number 1 is know some scales. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but why? Well, here we go. Let's take something really nice and easy, right? So say like a blues kind of song. Right? And now we're going to go whatever, right? So now, okay, Jimmy, let's go. Take a lead break. Here's my first lead break ever. I'm fooling around trying to improvise. Well, at least I know I should start on probably an A note or something. Now what do? Well, I don't know any scales, so I'm going to go. Terrible, right? So why do you need to know scales? You need at least know where to put your fingers. That's the key. You got to at least know where to put your fingers. Otherwise, you're going to hit a lot of bad notes. Right? And then you're not going to really learn. So what's the secret with scales? Well, hello. Anyway, what the secret to scales is that there's about, I don't know, don't quote me, maybe 35 scales in the entire world. Maybe if you include the ragas from Indian music, which is really hard, complicated, it's 40, 45 or so, but just let's assume it's 35 or so, right? Of those 35, this doesn't mean you have to know every scale that was ever created and mode created to mankind, backwards and forwards in every position. It doesn't mean that. So what I'm trying to do is make you calm down and say, wait a minute, I can do this, man, I can do it, and here's how. Then there's reality, okay? I would rather you know more scales than not, so just keep that in mind too. I'm not saying to don't learn the scales. Learn as many as you can. The more you learn, the better. There's no doubt about that. So don't misinterpret what I'm trying to say. So having said that, if you were starting out and you didn't know any scales, I would say, if I had to pick, having taught this stuff for many years now, I would say probably the top scales you would want to at least start with, to get you home, or the pentatonic, also referred to sometimes as the minor pentatonic. When you just say pentatonic, it means the minor pentatonic, the major pentatonic, the blues scale, and the major scale. So those 4 scales. Now, why is that? Why didn't I pick anything else? Well, I'm trying to minimize it, first of all. The pentatonic is great because it's nice and easy, and penta is 5, so it's only 5 notes. I'm not going to go through all the scales now, but and that's it, and then you're back to A. Okay, so that's great. So you already have, if that was the only scale you knew, you could start doing stuff. I'm really just actually running up and down the scale. But I almost sound like I know what I'm doing. It's better than this, right? And not knowing anything. So that's why you need to know a scale, so at least know where to put your fingers. So that's the first thing. The minor pentatonic is great because it's very useful, because it could be used to rock a bit. It could be used if you were in a minor key, which we didn't even get into yet. And it still works. That's why the regular quote-unquote minor pentatonic is a good starting point. The next thing is the major pentatonic, because if you're in more of a kind of vibe, you don't want to go. So that's why the major pentatonic is important to learn too, because at least you can go and fool around with that. Now you're getting a little better. So that's the major pentatonic, also 5 notes. Again, I won't go into the scales right now. Just look it up. Hopefully there's a few. You can go to my website too. I teach these in general lessons, by the way. But you can go to the internet. If you're good enough to look online and understand what they're talking about, just make sure you get trusted information that's not wrong. You always have to be careful about that, because sometimes people teach wrong. So the major pentatonic is the second one. The blues scale is another good one, because the blues scale adds another dimension to stuff with its extra note. Again, I'm not here to teach the scales. So the blues scale can really add another big dimension just by adding one more note. And then you can get a lot of riffs from that. Okay? Then the major scale. Okay? Just in case you have to do really pretty stuff. And why the major scale? Because, well, because it's the major scale. And it's very important on many levels. That's why. So, you know, the do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Because then it mixes it up a bit. It's kind of, you know, of all the 35 scales that are out there, these are like, you know, not too complicated, but they cover a very broad spectrum, in my opinion, when I teach this to people. They cover a very, very broad spectrum, from the minor pentatonic, the major pentatonic, the major scale itself, and the blues scale. You can cover a lot of ground with just those 4 scales, and they're not that hard. Okay? So if you can learn them everywhere in the neck, beautiful. If not, at least learn them in a few different positions. Okay, so that's the first thing. So you have to know scales, you have to know where to put your fingers and what makes sense. That's the first. So getting back to the higher part of the lesson, tip number 1 is know some scales. Know those 4 scales, you know, because they'll really make it easier to know where the heck to put your fingers. That's number 1. We didn't even get into playing it, but trust me on this. Number 2, very, very, very important, know what the chords are that you're playing against. This is so important, and I think a lot of people overlook this. Because if you were just playing a blues, not too hard. But if you're playing something, you know, as things get a little more complicated, if you're playing something like something with a little more complicated chord changes, it's important to know so that you can kind of think about, what would make sense to play against this. I should have played it slower so it sounds like an easier problem to tackle. Right? So I'm just making this up. That's a little complicated of a chord change, so you could really see how the flavor of the song just changed. I'm just making this up. Just see how the flavor of the song just changed a lot. So if you're just going in the major scale, just pretending, right? But if you stay in the major scale and don't think about the chord going on behind you, so you won't say, oh, wait a minute, that's a C chord, which kind of breaks the major scale a bit. So you got it, so you can jump to the pentatonic now. See, it's all coming together. So know the chords going on behind you. Very important. Very, very important, because it'll make you think a little bit and pick good notes. What are you trying to do when you improvise? You're trying to pick good notes, right? And sound different than everybody else. So know the chords. That's the second thing. Third thing, very important, know the key of the song, right? Hopefully, if you're at this juncture and you're playing, you probably know this stuff already, but, you know, I could spend 3 hours explaining this one, but the key of the song is hard to explain. So what is it really? The key of the song is what something resolves to. That's the best way to say it, but what does that mean? It's really hard to explain. So, don't quote me on this. Maybe 60% of all the songs in the world, they start on the key, maybe 60%. Not always, so it's a big exception. Well, because the song starts on A doesn't mean it's an A at all. But a lot of the times it is. But don't always assume that. So that's one thing. When you say something resolves, let's take an easy song for a minute. I'll Cry Instead by the Beatles. I got every reason on earth to be mad, right? So it starts on G. It's in G. Because I just lost the only girl I had. I can't get my way, get myself locked up today, but I can't, so I'll cry instead. See how it's resolving to that chord? So you're in the key of G. That's what resolve means. It happened to start on G, which, like I said, a lot of the times it does, 50, 60%, probably, average. but a lot of the times it doesn't. Let's take another Beatles song since the Beatles are so great. Help, right? Help. I need somebody help. Excuse me. I need somebody help. Anybody help. You know, I need someone, right? Don't you feel like we're unresolved right now? And we need to resolve. That's what resolve means. If I just ended the song right now, you'd be like, wait a minute. You got to finish this thing. Finish this thing. That's what it means when you resolve. Help. So that's what resolve means. Guess what? It's resolving to the key of A. And it started on B minor. Nothing to do with really A per se. Or, you know what I mean? I mean, it's in the right structure of chords and stuff like that in the A harmonized scale. But let's not get into that. But so it starts on B minor. Not even a major chord. It starts on B minor. So could you say that the help is in the key of B minor? Of course not. So that's a good example where something starts on not what you expect. So don't start playing, you know, against help, because then you'll sound terrible. It'll sound terrible, right? So that's where you need to know, at least know what key you're in. So what something resolves to is what the key is. Can I get my feet back on the ground? Won't you please, please help me? So that's the key. See how it resolves? If a good way to test resolve is to not resolve and see if you're left hanging. If you're left hanging, this chord is most likely the key. See that? And by the way, a key doesn't have to always be in a major key. It could be in a minor key too. All right? So, and the keys can get a little more complicated. So far we have know some scales. Okay? At least the minor pentatonic, major pentatonic, two nice easy scales, which you could do a lot with. Blues scale and the major scale. Those are the four scales I would say you should really know out of the gate. Then as you progress, learn more. I have all this stuff on my website too. I'm not trying to plug my own self, but I just FYI, if you are interested, it's there. But just know those four scales. So the second thing is know the chords going on. Okay, it's very important. If you don't know the chords, well, you can play on a scale, but all because you know a scale doesn't mean all those notes are going to fit. Because if the chords are a little more complicated and complex, they're not going to fit. So know the chords that are going on behind you. Understand what's going on behind you chord-wise. Third thing, of course, understand what key you're in, because where you're going to start your fingers, if you had something that was really complicated and you didn't know the key of help was A, you'd say, okay, I'm going to start over here. It's B minor. Okay, at least I know that. You're going to start over here. You're going to be so bad. You're going to be improvising so badly. You say, oh, it's in the key of A. Is it a blues song? Nah, I probably don't want to use a blues scale. I probably don't want to use the minor pentatonic either. I probably should play something like in the A major scale. That's why the major scale is important, because it's that one extra scale that covers a lot of other stuff that the minor pentatonic, the major pentatonic a little bit, and the blues scale don't cover. So that's why it's good to know the major scale too. All right, so again, learn the key. That's the third thing. The fourth thing, very, very important. This is how you'll get good, and I'm going to give you some great examples, is learn some few short riffs, okay? I also have these on my website too, by the way. You can I'm happy to look them up on the general lessons, but this is the right way. This is the way to play, man. This is the way to get good at improvising. Don't just learn patterns. Here's the difference. Short riffs, like between approximately 3 to 7 notes. Not really big. That's a nice big riff. That's a little, you know, that's a pattern, because there's a lot of notes in it and it's repeating mathematically and stuff like that. It sounds great. So, you know, great, but that's a pattern. That's a longer involved pattern. So that's not how you improvise. Later, yes, but when you're first starting, learn short little riffs and then put all those together based on the other 3 things I just said, and then guess what? You'll be so good at improvising. Let's get an example. So in the key of A, again, for example, keep it simple, kind of bluesy. If you knew this riff, for example, hey, now you got one riff. If you knew very short notes, not a lot of notes, that's it. Now you got another short riff, okay? Less is better, actually. That's it. Right there, there's another riff. Okay? So learn short riffs, minimal notes, and learn a lot of them. That's important. If you learn a lot of little riffs, this is what all the great players did. They learn all of these different riffs and they put them all together. That's how you get good. You can know every scale under the sun, upside down, backwards, on every fret, and play it beautifully. But if you don't know little riffs, what are you going to do? You're going to play the scale up and down all the time, and you're going to sound very robotic and stuff like that. So, learn little riffs, and then we're going to get into the actual application in a second. So then start improvising. So now what do you do, right? So you play. That's the key. Just do it. It's kind of like, and this is what I've told my students many times over the years, it's like, I don't know if I'm showing my age right now, but there was a Yellow Pages ad many years ago. The Yellow Pages, you look up phone numbers, and it said, just let your fingers do the walking. So that's what you should do. Just let your fingers go. Don't worry. I guarantee you, you know why? This is why people take them longer to get good at improvising. Here's the reason why. They worry too much. They worry about making mistakes, and they want to make it perfect out of the gate. You're never going to do it, period. So just bite the bullet, accept it. You're going to fumble. You're going to go, I'm doing so great. And you're fumbling and stumbling a bit. You're going to do it, number one. Number two, great example. Everybody does it. You're going to get stuck. At some point, you may even get good, and you're going to go. You're going to get stuck. Because you're going to say, I ran out of riffs to do, or things to do, and my mind can't think enough, and my fingers are going too fast, or this getting stuck, and my mind's trying to think. So you're going to fumble, you're going to stumble, and you're going to get stuck. Don't worry about it. Everybody does it. But it's like riding a bike. The more you do it, the better you get at it until you start riding more comfortably. You know what I mean? So, and don't be afraid. Just do it. Let your fingers do the walking. If you're too afraid, you'll be too gun shy to just try anything. You're going to make a mistake. You have to just remember that. All right? Stumble and fumble, as they say. And have a little fun with it, actually, when you stumble and fumble. Now, okay, so now here's what you don't want to do. So let's say now you got all this together. You know your scales. You know a few good scales. Very important. You know the chords going on behind you. You know the key of the song. And now you know a few short riffs. Those four things. That's the key. I think looking back at myself playing, teaching other people over the years, and blah, 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 I think if you follow those four key things, you'll get good at improvising anyway, even if you never saw this video. But if you use those four techniques now, you'll do it a lot quicker than if you would have done it on your own. If somebody told me this a long time ago, I would be like, oh yeah, right, that makes so much sense. You don't realize it until after the fact, when you become good at improvising, that's really what it entailed, right? So what do you do? And again, the last thing is don't forget, just let your fingers do the walking. But once you get comfortable with those 3 or 4 scales, you know the chords, you know the key, you know where to put your fingers, you know some short riffs, just put it all together. So now, last but certainly not least, how do you do it, right? Well, let's take something nice and simple, right? A blues tune in the key A, nice and slow so we don't feel a fast meter or anything like that. All right, I'm juiced up, man. I listened to this guy, Guitar by Jimmy, and he said, just know some scales. Okay, I know for sure. This is a really simple song. A, and A, D, and E, in the key of A. Okay, I'm feeling juiced up now, right? I know exactly where to put my fingers. I'm thinking already. I should be doing maybe something in the minor pentatonic, maybe the blues scale, and then I'll do some short riffs that I learned over the last few weeks, you know. So here's what you don't want to do. Even with some feel, that's good. Okay, why not? Well, that's doing the scale, up and down. You don't want to do that. If you want to do it once in a while, great, but that's where you have to break that. So that's a common mistake that people make when they start improvising, so I'm trying to speed you up here. So what do? Well, you mix it up a little bit. All right, now assuming you didn't even know any riffs yet, which, by the way, is a big help to know little riffs. Little riffs, and if you put them together, guess what? You're improvising. But if you didn't even know any short riffs, what would you do? Instead of just going all the way up the scale, stop yourself. Instead of going like this, just go. And go back. It's better than going. That sounds like all you're doing is running up and down a scale. Guess what? You just broke the pattern a little bit. Instead of doing the whole scale, you just broke it a little bit, mix it up a little bit. You know what's in the scale. Now, trust me, when I play, I don't think mathematically and divide numbers by 6 and 4. You know, I'm not doing that. I'm just trying to make you think a little bit mathematically. Maybe it might help you. Instead of always going up the scale, just mix it up a little bit. You know that the notes are this. Right? So maybe instead of starting at the beginning, start somewhere in the middle. You already mixed it up. Mathematically, if you start somewhere in the middle of the scale, you already mixed it up. All right? So start somewhere else. Look how many combinations can be done. Right? But it's better than going... Start from 1, all the way up to 5, and back. It's better than doing that. At least start somewhere mathematically a little different in the scale. And even by accident, you may even start making up your own riffs. How do you think some of the great blues players did? Anyway, but what really speeds you up is knowing little riffs. Knowing little riffs. See, I mixed up the pentatonic. Whatever I did. Instead of going, mix it up a little bit. All right? You could take, just think about it mathematically. You could take 5 notes and have a lot of combinations of those notes, right? Especially 5. 5 is a lot. So, you know, you could do like, you know, you could do a lot. So just try and think a little bit, mixing it up. You know, don't sit there with your calculator and do math. I'm just saying, but music and math are a lot positively correlated, by the way. But you know, if you mix it up a little bit, is all I'm trying to say, and you'll say, hey, yeah, why do I have to do the pentatonic scale and go exactly like this? Why can't I just start over here? Guess what? You just made up a riff, even if it was by accident. 3 notes, 1, 2, 3. And it's all in the pentatonic, and all you did was start somewhere in the middle and go up or mix up the combinations of the playing. You just made up a riff, and you'll find yourself doing that, and you'll find yourself making up more riffs. But again, the next thing that really triggers you to get faster at this is learn short riffs, not complicated patterns. Complicated patterns are great. You know, there's nothing wrong with that if you're into that, all that, and you get to that point. That's more of a complex shredding thing going on later in life, and that's fine. But I'm telling you, as far as improvising goes, learn short little riffs go really far. Because guess what? You know, you can learn 5, 10, 20, 30, 40 short little riffs. Guess what? You have an arsenal of stuff to play now. Try and keep it simple. Bend. So, and there was just a few short riffs in there. You know, that was maybe 4 or 5, I'm just saying. And the more you do it, the better you get at it, and the more it becomes natural. And so don't feel bad if you go, you're feeling good. And then you maybe jumble up rhythm too. You know, it's natural, it's normal. You're going to fumble, you're going to stumble, probably go out of rhythm too. Because when people panic, they want to go fast. And you're gonna get stuck. Now what do I do? Let me just run back to pentatonic. Okay, right? So people like to default to that because they know the scale. So you're going to do it. So don't worry. Don't beat yourself up over it. But the more you do it, the better you'll get at it. So, you know, the more you do this stuff, the less of a chore it'll be feeling for you, and the more it'll become a little natural. You'll be like, whoa, you know, that kind of feels good now. Now I'm feeling like, hey, yeah, come on, bring on the chords, man. I want to show off a little bit and show people that I can just make stuff up. But short riffs are key, man, because, you know, learning, you know, like I said, complicated patterns. Great. But, okay, so now use it in the Libre. Great. Now what else are you going to do? I don't know. Let me do it again. You know what I'm saying? So that's why long patterns that are involved like that, it's good. It's good to learn, you know, and you'll use them later on in your playing, I guarantee you. But again, what are we trying to do right now? We're trying to figure out how do you improvise? How do you get good at it, right? So short little riffs are the key, man, not big patterns, because you can use them once, but then after that, what are you going to do? You know what I mean? So it's just going to sound the same over and over and over, and it's going to sound like a pattern. Little riffs, though, if you could connect a lot of little riffs together, it sounds like you're playing lead. There's a little riff. Short. 1, 2, 3, 4. Four notes. That's what I'm talking about. So let your fingers do the walking, don't forget. So this is how you, I mean, and it takes time. It's one of those things you just can't really teach the people, but you have to let your fingers do the walking, practice it, just do it, play against as many things as you can. You know, you don't have to be in a band to do it, it doesn't hurt, but you can play against real songs, even songs that don't have lead breaks. You don't have to have a song that has a lead break to practice improvising. Play against anything. Play against Help. You know, when Help was playing. Sorry, I'm thinking of another song. Anyway, so, you know. So now, you know, because we went to B minor doesn't mean you have to go to B minor position. Doesn't mean you have to do that. Why? Because think about the key of the song you're in. And if you do those 3 or 4, I'm trying to put it together for you. If you did those 3 or 4 scales, minor pentatonic, major pentatonic, blues, and major, you'd say, you know what, this is a major kind of song, even though there's a B minor there. It's a kind of A major kind of song. So I'm going to stick in the major pentatonic world or the major scale world, and it should work, even when I'm on the B minor. You know, that's where it breaks a little bit, but that's the Beatles for you. And then you'll stumble, you know, maybe you'll go. Maybe you'll do that because you're in the major scale world. So that's good. That's good. It's an example where you're going to mess up. So for that example, when you messed up like that, you say, wait a minute, this guy Guitar by Jim Fuge told me to hit, you know, stay in a major scale because it kind of makes sense. Yeah, but, you know, there's exceptions to everything, especially in music and songwriting and guys like the Beatles and Led Zeppelin. So, you know, you went to this G chord, but I told you to know the chords, right? So that's why you got to know the chords too. So even though the A major scale or the a major pentatonic was probably the right choice to use, you have to know that at that point in the song you go into a G chord. You're kind of breaking the rules. Hey, it happens, man. We're good songwriters. So you're breaking the rules and you're on a G chord just for that part. So, you know, mix it up a little bit. So you know the chords. Then all of a sudden you find yourself going in and out. So now another thing is going in and out of scales a little bit, also modes, but going in and out of scales a bit, because if you started in the A major pentatonic or the A major scale, you know, that doesn't mean everything you play in this entire lead break has got to be in that scale. You know, you can do 2 scales in the same song. So that's what I'm saying. That's why those 4 key scales cover a lot of room. You know, so I started in the A major or major pentatonic for the most part, right? It's probably in the A major because I threw, did I throw A flat? I don't remember. But anyway, whatever. And then, you know, and then I want to mix it up because I hear this G chord coming. So, you know, you could say technically, you know, you're actually going into a mode right there. But you could say minor pentatonic temporarily for that minute. It's holding you over right now. So you're kind of mixing scales in the same song, which is what you want to do. So, I mean, listen, like I said, more scales you know the better, but I'm just trying to do a little bit of a reality check with people, and if you had to at least know 4 to start, this would probably be the 4 you should know. Again, the more the better. So again, no one can really teach you how to improvise, guys, but you have to play, let your fingers do the walking, don't be afraid to fumble and stumble, make mistakes, get stuck, and say, oh, how do I do next? I was doing so good, you were kicking. and then you'll fumble and stumble, and then you'll get stuck. Okay, it's going to happen. So don't crucify yourself over it. So the top 4 or 5 things I would say to get good at improvising are, and these are all equally important, by the way, know some scales, right? The minor pentatonic, the major pentatonic, the blues scale, and the major scale. Second thing is, know the chords going on. Very, very important. Like Help is a great example, how it kind of broke things a bit when it went to that G chord. So if you started off smart in the major key somehow, or the major pentatonic, you'd be sounding great. But then you might hit a bad note if you didn't say, hey, wait a minute, there's a G chord that goes on. That kind of is a little wacky for a major pentatonic. It's a little, a little out of whack. So know the chords. Third thing is know the key. All right. All because Help starts on B minor doesn't mean it's in the key of B minor. You have to learn how to know how things resolve, right? Okay. Let's see, and then fourth, very importantly, learn as many as you can short few note riffs. And when I say few note, I would say, I don't know, 3 notes you could do a lot with. That's it, man, 3 notes. Guess what? Guess what? You have a lot of riffs now you could do. Just 3 notes. Don't worry about big, long, complicated patterns and this and that, yet at least. So learn short riffs. And I wouldn't go much more than, I don't know, I'm just throwing a number out there. This is what I said on my website on these lessons. I have a lot of these, by the way. I wouldn't go much more than 7 notes. I'm just throwing a number out there, but, because after 7 or 8 notes, it's not a riff anymore. It's starting to become a pattern. You know what I mean? When you start having that many notes in a riff, it's starting to become a pattern. You don't want to do that yet, at least when you improvise. All right? Throw patterns in at the right time and do them. It's great. But you don't want to throw in big, long patterns when you improvise too much because it sounds a little patternish. They're great, though, when you want to throw them in, but you use them sparingly. But for the majority, when you're playing lead and when you're learning how to improvise, short little riffs. Learn as many as possible. Make some up. All you got to do is break the sequence of the scale you're doing, right? Start on the minor pentatonic because it's nice and easy. Break the sequence a bit. So, and then last but not least, let your fingers do the walking. So, know some scales, know the chords you're gonna that are going on behind you. Very important. A lot of people overlook this or don't teach it, unfortunately. Know the key of the song that you're playing in. Don't assume it's the first chord on the song. Learn some short riffs, short few note riffs, 3 to 7 notes. And that one, learn as many as you can. And then just start improvising. Okay, so 5 including actually putting your fingers on the guitar. So those 4 key things, I think if you do that, you might surprise yourself. And you'll definitely do this faster than the normal process takes. It's kind of a normal process anyway. And you would be going through this kind of a thing. And you might not even realize it. But if somebody now tells you this, it might speed you up a lot. Because you'll start thinking, okay, well, these are the key things I need to know. Let me do that. Especially those short few note riffs are really important because that's how you can really bridge things together and not sound boring, I use it again, so what? But you're going to do that. All right, but see, I just threw 4 or 5 different short note riffs in there that I'm going to use over and over again in different keys and different situations and not sound too bad. But the more you learn them, the more your library of riffs becomes little short note riffs. And guess what? You start sounding like a better player. And then when you're up against other chords and stuff like that, you have a big arsenal of a library of riffs to choose from. And the more you keep doing it, the better you get at it. So just let your fingers do the walking too. So I hope this helps you in your musical career, and send me a comment. I hope it speeds you up at least if you're at this point. If you're a basic person and you haven't gotten to this point yet, remember this for when you do get to improvising. If you're literally at this crossroads in your guitar career, this will help you tremendously and speed you up. If you're an advanced player, it might help you a little bit too, because maybe you are stuck in just learning complicated patterns. Right, and then you're saying, sometimes this happens to really great advanced players. They can rip and wail and do complicated stuff, but they just sound very patternish. sometimes running through the scales, you say, man, how come I can't make the guitar sound like good, like Clapton or Page? And this is the reason why, because you're just running through too many patterns and shredding, and sometimes it sounds a little robotic. So this is even helpful for advanced players. You might find this useful to say, hey, make you think a little differently, and just say, learn a lot of short note riffs. That'll piece a lot of the stuff together and make you sound like, you know, better on the guitar, as opposed to just running through all these shredding riffs and patterns and stuff like that. So I'm Jim Fuge, and this is guitarbyjimi.com. I wanted to take a little extra time in this lesson because it's really, really important, no matter what stage of the guitar you're at. And let's face it, it's a really hard thing to figure out. Like, how do you improvise, you know? Unless you've gone through it for a year or two or whatever, then you finally get it. But, you know, it's hard. You know, I wish somebody had told me this when I was young and say, oh, that's a good trick, you know what I mean? So this is hopefully to speed you up in that process and help you out with your guitar career. And thanks for listening, everyone. And I will see everyone on the next lesson. And please subscribe to my videos if you haven't. And check out my website. Where are you? I think you're over here. I think. It could be in the wrong spot. But check out guitarbyjimi.com. I have a lot of great videos on there for you guys. And good luck with everyone's playing. And I'll see you in the next video. Thanks, guys. Rock on.